is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Panthers Nation podcast. Now, we're not on StreamYard, obviously. We are in Lockerroom Charlotte's brand new store over here in Charlotte. It is beautiful in here, guys. It's awesome.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm loving the decor. You know, bringing us back into that authentic time of the year.
And like, when you talked about it earlier, every time you come in here, you notice something different. Man, you can't help but notice all the gear, all the stuff they got, man. I'm telling you right now, there's an abundance of riches. You know what I'm saying, behind us if you look at it. So I mean, yeah, it's a great place to be right now, man.
Everything we're wearing, everything you see is stuff that's here at Lockerroom Charlotte. So if you are a Panthers fan, not even Panthers, Hornets, NBA, NFL, like just vintage, they got so much stuff here, it's not even funny. We've already got a couple pieces. We're wearing stuff from them now.
That's
so we
right.
got a shout out to them.
Check it out. Check it out.
I see you've seen Shontis has worn a couple starter jackets from here too.
Yeah, I'm a frequent buyer. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to rack up my membership points. You know what I'm saying? Trying to get my stuff right.
I'll say if it's not been payday, don't come out though. You ain't trying to drop because you'll drop a lot of money because they got stuff that's worth it here. But y'all, first off, also, congratulations for us to all be here in the same spot.
Yes,
Finally,
sir.
It took a little bit of time.
Just a little bit. It's just maybe 2 years or so for all of us to finally record in the same building.
Yeah,
We've always talked about
we
it.
met, a week ago or so?
Yep,
And
to
now
plan
we're
this
back.
out.
Yeah, now we're here, face to face.
It is crazy.
It feels natural though, man. It doesn't really feel like it's like our first time meeting. I guess we talk on the phone for so long, it's like, eh.
It's the same thing, yeah. It just doesn't seem any different. It feels natural. I gotta say, that natural feeling I felt here, and I felt out at Spartanburg today. I was out there for the practice for the first time for training camp, and it went off like a hitch. Like, it felt like a different energy out there in Wofford College with this new team coming up for training camp to start off today. As we're at the time that we're recording this, Wednesday, first day of training camp, and it was just a natural feel all around.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I saw like a bunch of Bryce Young jerseys going out at the camp, and I guess it's different now because I'm like, wow, this is a lot of people's this is their first time being really in depth with the Panthers and having Bryce Young start their journey off as their new quarterback of this era. I mean, it's fun to see, and I was really happy to see a lot of the guys that were injured being on the field. That was a big deal, especially guys like Dante Jackson coming off an Achilles. I didn't think he would even be ready at this point in time of the season.
They kept that, right to the very end. They didn't tell anybody. I think it was Fitterer in the press conference yesterday after they all started moving in, and like we had the idea that he was going to be coming back,
Yep.
but they had never really said, JC, when he got injured, they said he's going to be out until training camp. He'll come back around then. Like you said, with Dante's Achilles injury, they didn't say anything about it, and then it was in that presser. He was like, yeah, he's off the PUP list. We're like, oh, cool, that's good to know.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Well, back to your point, I mean, I saw all the fanfare around Bryce Young. Everybody was excited. He seemed to be nice and loose when he did his presser, had the jokes, talked about it, what he was going to sing. So I'm really excited to see what we look like coming into the weeks coming in, and then when the Jets come to visit us, to really see how we perform.
He's funny. He he must be doing press conferences in the mirror at home or since he's been a kid, because every time he comes up, like yesterday's for moving, he started it off by thanking us for being out there because he knew how hot it was. He was like, make sure y'all stay hydrated. And I'm like, what is this? And then it was his 22nd birthday yesterday. He didn't say a thing about it. He didn't mention a thing about it being his birthday. The team didn't mention anything about it, and we didn't know until they posted the picture afterwards. We're like, it's this kid's birthday?
But the guy, he's a smooth operator, man. This feels natural to him. The spotlight feels natural. He doesn't ever seem out of sorts when he's in front of the camera. I mean, I expect the same thing on the field because that seems to be his MO on the field as well. Just a smooth operator, cool, calm, and collected type of guy.
See, I agree with your point you made on Twitter a couple weeks back. I think he's a sneak dog. Like, he's got that fire in him, and he holds. I don't think it's an act, but I think he keeps that calm, cool, and collected. And it's kind of like the Hulk. Like, I'm always angry. He's always got that going on. Same with Luke Kuechly, where he was a totally different human being when he was on the field and off. I think he's kind of sneaky about it.
Yeah, well, he's a super prime professional. I mean, ever since he's been in high school up through college, now he's in the pros. He hasn't changed. His demeanor's hasn't changed. He's always been even keel. Well, my question to you is, as a fan being out there today, what was some of the highlights? Give me your top two that you can say off the top of your head.
In terms of just being out there?
Exactly.
I mean, for the one thing, it was very fast paced. There was purpose for everything. We saw the videos last year. We saw the talk last year, and it was, doing weird formations or weird rituals, standing and doing different things. It was odd. This felt like a practice from the first first horn to the last horn. They were always doing something, and there was always something different to watch. I think honestly, just seeing them all go full speed, it wasn't full speed, 85%, 95%. They're just in shells, but they were doing teams. And JC, Dante, Vaughn, Brian Burns up against Hayden Hurst, Miles Sanders, and they're all out there. And so it was the first time you kind of got to see them going full tilt. And I think that was really cool because we've talked about all this, all the speculation, what's going to go on, how's it going to look. And everyone keeps saying, you know, like Bryce is like their biggest guy to watch. For me, I don't know about y'all, Bryce is the guy I'm paying attention to the least. Like, I'm kind of pretty much okay with what I've already seen from him. And as long as he can translate it to the field, I'm cool with whatever he does in Spartanburg. Like, that's fine. I'm looking at some other guys, you know, Mingo, I'm looking at Miles Sanders, guys like that who need to, they're bigger question marks. He's not a question mark, but.
And like you said, not really paying attention to Bryce as much because we kind of have a nice feel for what he's going to be. But, you know, we talked about the receivers in the pre-show. How do you feel about how those guys line up and what order were they going in? Did you notice anything in particular about that?
So that was interesting that you asked that. And this could be just like, you know, speculation or just kind of putting thoughts to nothing. But if you ever play high school football or any level of football, especially when you get in position groups, ISO, one thing you kind of know is that for the most part, it's depending on how early on it is, especially in season, but depending on early on, they run their drills in their order of, you know, their hierarchy. Yeah. It might not be their depth chart, but they kind of run it how it's been going. So, like, I remember the first ISO drill, it was Adam Thielen, which we all figured that was going to happen.
Sure.
Then it was Mingo, right off the jump. He was the second one to go. Then it was TMJ, and then it was Chark. Now, if I'm thinking about how that might look, it could have just been, you know, X slot Y Z, and that's how they go. You'll go left from right, if that's how you think it's going to go. But I think that it was interesting to see how that continued as they kept going throughout their drills. Now, what they were doing in minicamp is kind of the same thing. When they got to minicamp, like they would be running all the wide receivers with all the quarterbacks and all the wide receivers with all the offensive lines. So like they didn't switch up the offensive lines as much. And they were doing the 7-on-7s and then the 11-on-11s. So like they were running them all kind of just haphazardly. And so I don't know if that kind of changed it a little bit, but I did like some of the things I saw. Very clean routes, very clean throws. There were not a lot of dropped passes. I mean, it's something that, you know, you'd see in, like, Remember the Titans. There are very few footballs that were on the ground. So that's, at least for me, that's one of my better things.
Outside of that, too, I was wondering as well, you know, we've heard about the training camps in past, especially the last couple of years with Matt Rule being at the helm, the discombobulation, the debacles that were happening. Was it a lot more smoother? How were the coaches' demeanors being on the field? And the interaction with not only just the players, but also the fans?
Yeah, so we were talking about that, and we asked Frank Reich that because, you know, this has been the biggest thing is how are these coaches, you know, handling this together? They had it in minicamp, but now you've got full tilt. Of course, Frank and Dom, they're, you know, this is like surreal for them. They're coming back to Spartanburg for the first time in however long. But what you noticed, it was very, like, almost like kind of like, you know, I mean, football practice is football practice. You got the same basic things and the same basic setup. So they were running, you know, you got a horn, everyone rotates. You got a horn, people, you know, converge. You got a horn, people separate. And there was no, like, kind of dawdling around. Like, they were kind of talking at the beginning. You saw, like, JC and Dante were, like, you know, throwing the ball back and forth with each other. Like, they were doing some special team stuff. But it was very, very, like, organized. It was very, like, I need to go here and do this. And it was very, like, go from ISO or position groups to ISO to special teams working other things, then to 7-on-7s while the line works, then to 11-on-11s, and then cut it. So it was a lot more organized, I'd say, and the energy was up. I mean, Deuce was chirping everybody. You knew he was going to chirp everybody. You know, Thomas Brown was kind of standing in the wings, kind of watching everything, and Frank Reich was right up there the entire time. I mean, he's a very hands-on head coach. There's never a time where he's not, you know, but in the right way. Like, he's sitting there back with the play card, kind of looking at everything, seeing what's going on. And it seems like he's got, you know, this vision in place for what he wants to happen. And the tight end group got a lot of work, too. That was one thing I was looking at. We've been thinking about it. Hayden Hurst wasn't 100% from what they were telling us. We kind of figured that's what he was going with just because he said he was completely healthy, but I don't think they want to overwork him because I think they're going to be a big part of the offense.
Absolutely. Defensively, though, did we notice anything about the pass rush group? I know we've been all wondering if we're going to add anybody before camp, add another camp body. They seem to be set in stone on, like, they like the group that they have. Did we see anything in the first day that kind of gave you any telltale signs?
You know, it's tough. They were watching. That was the group I spent the least apart just because of the way that they have it for us to film. We only could be kind of on, like, the outskirts of it, and so you kind of only get the groups that are going to be in that area. Like with minicamp, when you're in the Panthers practice facility, you're up on the wall and everything's in front of you, and it's just about what you can, like, you know, zoom in to see. But for this, it was kind of like an L. So they had them running on the far side. They were running their normal drills, and when it got to 7-on-7 and 11-on-11, it was that same kind of thing where you saw, Mosby, you saw, I can never remember his name. I'm going to call him Hill because I know that's the last part of his name. I can never pronounce the second part. You saw those guys kind of where they thought they would be. I saw Mosby a lot on the edge. You saw Luvu coming around the edge a lot. I didn't see, and I don't know if they're going to implement it yet, but Bell and Rowe, they've been talking about kind of pushing them forward. Same with Chin. They hadn't done that yet. Chin was still running with the DBs at this point in time. Right. So I'm interested to see how they'll use him going forward. Of course, it's day one, but there was no, walkthroughs. They did their morning walkthroughs, they told us, but there was no, slow pace. The minute they got out there, they were running drills, they were running 7-on-7s, and it didn't stop until they finished up. So I think it's going to be that kind of just fluidity of how they circle around. I mean, Burns was coming off the edge. That was the, Burns, Yatur, Brown, Marquise, they were all going off the front line. And you saw a lot more of Shaq, Luvu. He would kind of go back and forth. So I think that they're being a little more hesitant about it, and I don't know if that is to your point, to see what they think about. I mean, he talked about it, yesterday. Did not exude any confidence in me that they were looking for anybody, and you got guys like Daniel Hunter, Ngoku, Clowney that are up there that might not maybe fit that 3-4 set, but, Burns was saying it was going to show off his IQ. And that really made me excited because we've always seen him as that explosive talent, but the IQ side of things, seeing the field a lot better, I'm excited to see how he could implement that.
I think this may be a second round, breakout season for him, just being underneath this new regime, them actually giving him the power to be the player that he can be. I'm very interested to see how he steps up, not only in the captain role, but see how he's also going to move on the field and see how he's going to impact.
And I think the biggest test to that is he said it we obviously know all the stuff going on with Nick Bosa, trying to figure out his contract. And he said basically, they didn't say it, but they basically said they're waiting out that contract before they make a decision, which I understand. But then you're going to get a situation you're going to get a situation like they got in LA right now, and Joey Burrow, that, whoever gets it first, the other one's just going to get a bigger deal. So if you wait for Bosa, you're going to get a giant deal. But the one thing he said is that he never thought at all about sitting out. He missed all that time, and he wanted to be with his guys. He wanted to be with the defense and the guys that he hadn't had the chance to meet up with. That's a big character evaluation right there for me.
Right, and I think both of their situations are totally different. Bosa, I mean, he's in the position of, I won't be there until we get this done. At least with Burns, the energy as far as the relationship between him and the front office felt a lot more, relaxed. It doesn't feel like they're not as pressed to get this thing done right now. Obviously, like you said, they want to get their deal done after Bosa just so he can get the top dollar. But it doesn't feel pressed, and everybody seems to be in good spirits about where they're at right now.
Do y'all think he deserves top dollar? Because it could be 20 mil, 22 mil now.
Well, you got to look at it. I think Bosa's going to probably reset the market.
Yeah.
For sure,
Does he deserve to reset the market? We talk about Bosa and Brian Burns.
I mean, you look at the productivity and what Bosa's meant to that defense as opposed to what Burns slotted in, you know what I mean? But I think once Bosa sets the market, Burns is either going to be equal but right underneath. I don't think he's going to reset it over Bosa.
Right. If you ask me who I think should reset it, it should be Bosa. I would have Brian Burns, like you said, just slated right underneath that. But I mean, he'll benefit greatly from Bosa getting this deal. But I wouldn't have. He's not a market resetter, at least not yet. I mean, he just had his first double-digit sack season. Obviously, under this new regime, we think his game will expand. But to this point, we've always thought that there's another level he can get to. I think he barely scratched the surface last year. I think we can see more eventually. But I mean, I think right underneath or right at the number that Bosa's at will be fine with me.
I mean, you asked me. I think we got the best DC in the game right now. I mean, me and the comms mentioned it. I think he's going to be our secret weapon, getting that defense to the next level. Burns is definitely a key into that. We also talked about Frankie Louvu. We've had our jokes here and there about who he is, and I think he's bigger to our team than we want to give him credit for. He's definitely going to be one of those mainstays, and I think Idro is definitely going to use this defense. We're going to see a lot of different schematics, and I think it's going to be a brand new day.
Yeah, we talk about it, and I think you're going to see it more. That was always it was the joke of the Phil Snow regime, was the positionless defense and moving everybody around. I think Avero can actually do that in a way that works because he actually has a scheme that facilitates it, and he's got the guys in place. I think, the Von Bell signing is extremely under-talked about because if you look at what he's done in the defenses in the past and just the expertise that he's brought, he's the senior guy, on that defensive back group right now. You know, he's got the experience, he's got the know-how, and him pairing with Eric Rowe and him pairing with Xavier Woods, like you've got raw talent and then veteran presence in that defensive back group. The only problem is going to be keeping him healthy. So like you said, it's a big thing that they were all out there today because like we said, like we started out with, we didn't know what Dante was going to be doing. We knew JC has been trying to work on keeping himself healthier, but that's the biggest thing. But you talk about, you know, Frankie Louvu and about especially Brian Burns too. I think the aggravating part with Brian Burns and Nick Bosa, you talked about how much he's meant to that defense. He's meant so much to that defense because look at the front seven that's around him. One of the most ridiculous front sevens in the NFL. And it's like if you gave him that kind of talent to connect with, then he could be so much more of a presence and with an output because you got to block somebody. Right now, it's almost like you're using him because you're using him as bait almost to say we're going to have to double team him, and that allows somebody else to get open.
Right.
So you got to put someone out there. Then he can really wreak havoc on his own directly.
Well, one name that you haven't mentioned, and I think is going to be integral in that whole scheme, is going to be Derek Brown. So how did he look? Did you get a chance to get a good look at him? How did he come in? What was his physique like?
He looks. I don't want to say lean.
Sure.
That's not the right word, but he looks a lot more muscular. Like, you know, he was never a larger guy to begin with in terms of his proportions, but he looks big. Icky looked huge.
Sweet. Love
Icky
it.
looked like he put on 10, 15 pounds. It was ridiculous. Same with Brian Burns. He looks ginormous right now. But speaking about Derek Brown specifically, I really think that the two guys they brought in, like these are not, you know, like bargain bin. These are not like guys that are at the tail end. These are guys that want to work and want to fit into the system well. Deshaun Williams and Shai Tuttle, I think, really could provide a really good rotation for him, just like we've been wanting for him for so long. You know, Ioannidis didn't really have that output, didn't have the health for it.
Right.
You figured, you know, that you would get some of it from, I guess that would have been McCoy. You would have thought, but we had him playing the way they had him playing. He didn't really put in a position where he could. But you have two like dedicated defensive tackles that can also. Williams played some time on the end, so he can play some of that outside stuff. Shai, I think, also played some time on the end, if I'm not mistaken. So I think that will be very opening for Derek Brown, and I think it's going to be one of those guys that he's going to really break through. But the problem becomes is, you know, it doesn't matter how quickly you get back there if you don't have a middle group of guys. Like the linebackers for me right now are just still my biggest concern. There's so many question marks. Like we talk about it, just not even from how because the guys that are positives on the group are guys that are going to be doing stuff on the ends too. And I think that unless guys like, you know, Brandon Smith step up, or guys like we said, you know, Kruger Hill step up. I can't remember if that's a name or not.
Yeah, that's
it's close to it. It's close enough. We know your name. There's 3 of it, so it makes sense. It's close enough. But I think that's the linebacking core. Like, they've got the depth per se. Like, I don't think there's a big drop off between their starters and their, you know, outside of Shaq. I don't think there's a huge drop off as opposed to, you know, defensive backs where you've got all those guys, but then, you know, if they're overworked and overutilized, they're going to get tired.
But that's always been our soft spot, right? We talked about that last year. Like, that DB group is going to be interesting to see how they come together. But you did mention Shaq. Did he look long in the tooth today? I mean, this, you know, I know it's the first day. But how did he look? Was he out there bouncing on? Did he look light on his feet? Like, how was he?
So, him and Brian Burns have been getting up at 5:30 every morning.
Okay.
Like, to do some training, do some working out, to try to make sure their bodies are right. So, he was kind of already in, like, the middle of his zone going out there. So, he was a bit, not quieter per se, but he was kind of locked in already from the jump. And so he was able to kind of keep guys locked in. And they had these different drills they were doing to facilitate their moving from that second level to the first level or the second level to the back level, you know, kind of shifting them back and forth. And so I think that was good to see because that's going to be a big factor in terms of how this defense operates. Is really, like, they're not anchors. They're more of that swiveling door, you know, because it can either come up and attack from them or you can have people come and attack from behind them. But I say one guy that really I liked seeing was Jamie Robinson. He was flying all over, and he was, you know, we said he's got that dog in him. You know, we said you look at the X-rays, like you'll see the dog there. He was talking about all the different stuff. He was putting his money where his mouth is, and he was flying around.
I was gonna ask. I mean, so where is he working at? Is he working more like in a nickel position, or is he strictly corner or safety? Or
no, so he was working out. He was working at safety when I did see him, but more of like they've got the same kind of formation they're doing, like with Von Bell, with him, and with like guys like Eric Rowe when they do move him around, where it's this kind of like, you know, free safety and strong safety can either be like left, right, or a front back. They've got him pushed way up sometimes, so he's almost playing like that in between middle linebacker and strong safety or free safety position. to where he's coming up and running like that. But he was like he had a lot of in routes. They were running a lot of slant routes, a lot of check down routes. He was flying on. He was clamping down on them. I mean, they were like the DBs were coming to the ball. Von Bell hit the crap out of DJ Chark. He didn't mean to, but he popped him. He popped him quick. So that was a fun little introduction for both of them to get out there.
So real quick, how big did Robinson look to you though? Did he look as big as he stated? We talked about that when he was drafted, right? Our worry was he may be a little bit leaner than what we wanted him to be. Did he look imposing, or did he look like you thought he would?
Yeah, he looked a little bit taller for a cornerback too. He definitely looked more like a free safety. Like he's got that height on him, and he had some muscle. He's a little bit on the leaner side, yeah, but you could definitely tell that he has that versatility, and you can definitely tell he's got that speed to be able to attack. Like he's got that good defensive back build that you want. You've got your guys that are a bit smaller, a bit faster, but a little bit quicker. But he has a presence about him that you see from guys like Von Bell, Eric Rowe, Xavier Woods are kind of all on that same level. He's got more like a J.C. Horn kind of build, with a little bit longer, a little bit thinner. JC's longer too. He's got that height on him where he's not as kind of compact, and he uses that to his advantage.
Okay.
So it was definitely interesting to see. I mean, they were running a lot of those drills, a lot of different back and forth they were doing, and like I said, they were having guys come up and try to jump up. There was one batted ball. That's the last we're going to talk about it for the rest of the training camp. That's it. I'm saying that it happened. You can go look at it if you want, but that was it. He also had insane touchdown passes and insane catches. He had one to DJ Chark. That was a long bomb. It was a beautiful pass.
Yeah. Adam Thielen. I saw a lot of clips of him and Adam Thielen connecting early. I mean, it's kind of what we expected, but I mean, what did you see from your time there at camp?
That connection is already built in. Like, that is the connection, and I think that's the exact reason they brought him in there. I don't think of Thielen like a tight end. Thielen's not going to be your deep post route guy. He's not going to be your verts guy. He will be your comebacks, your hitches, your slants. He's going to be the safety valve. I think you're going to see guys like Miles Sanders and Hayden Hurst provide more of those big play facets and not necessarily be your safety valves. Like, they could still be their consistent ones, but he was running over the middle a lot. He had some deeper routes, but I think Miles Sanders, a lot more of the bubble routes, a lot more of these screen plays they're going to try to do, and then I think it's going to be guys like Ian and Hayden going over the middle, going in the seam, coming around and trying to make guys miss. I mean, Hayden was looking good. He wasn't full speed per se, but he was looking good. And you know what? And I know you're going to hate me saying it. Ian looked good. He was running good routes. He looked lean. He looked healthy. He looked in good shape. And they had the tight ends running with the wide receivers the whole time. In years past, we've had them running with the running backs and with the linemen. They were running with the wide receivers during ISO. And they were running the same routes that the wide receivers were running, which I think is really a testament to how Frank Reich wants to use these tight ends.
How did Tommy Tremble? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
that's exactly where I was getting ready to go, right? How did Tommy Tremble look? Because, we've had our questions about him. This is his year to make a break. So what did he look like today?
Tommy Tremble's an interesting acquisition because we've always talked about it, and especially since we got him, that versatility of being able to be a pull blocker as well. I think with the way that they view Ian Thomas, because from the get-go, they still have never had change up. We saw the restructuring of his contract and had that pushed forward. I think Tommy might take a bit more of a back seat, if not more of like kind of a Swiss Army knife kind of role. He was not getting a whole lot of the touches. They still got guys, like Stephon Sullivan. They still got guys like him up there that are running some of their stuff. Not Colin Thompson anymore, but that's all right. But I think that he might not necessarily take a back seat, but I think provide that kind of – I don't know how much Ian Thomas is going to do in terms of run blocking and pass blocking now. I think he might be utilized more in, dual tight end sets. Now, of course, just, from what we've seen, they had a dual tight end play I saw where they were both running crossing routes. So I think they might use Ian a bit more in that regard. And also because of Hayden's history with his health, you don't want to utilize Ian just as a blocking tight end anymore, because if Hayden does go down, and you have built up this offense to be very tight end centric, you need someone that can come in and fill. And that's kind of what he did. We were hoping he would do when he was first drafted. And he didn't do it the way we wanted to do, but I don't think he was utilized properly. So if they are going to go as tight end heavy as they want to, because Frank likes the whole room. He made a point to say that. I asked him I asked him what he saw from the tight ends and how he planned to use it. And he said he loved Hayden Hurst's, versatility and his presence and his energy, and just being in 6 different offenses in his 6 years in the league. This is nothing new. This is nothing new to him. There's no anxiety. There's no grace period. So I think that Ian will provide more of that true number 2 role, and Tommy might not take a back seat, but I think take more of a presence to help out when needed. You know, if they got some of these front sevens we're going to be facing in this stretch of the schedule, I think he's going to be needed. Right. Not to say that our line needs any help. I mean, but it's always helpful to have, because I don't think Miles is not your blocking running back.
Right.
Like, if I have to choose one of them to block, I'm choosing Tremble. I don't know about y'all.
Yeah.
But
even who you didn't really mention with the receiving group, Laviscus, right? So he's going to end up being in that mood of blocking and coming off the slide blocks and all that stuff too. So we're interested to see how they use him and what he's going to look like.
Yeah, the wide receiver position is really interesting. Like, there's a lot going on with it, and there's a lot of players. Like I said, we saw they cut Marquise Stevenson. That wasn't a huge. I mean, it was a surprise that it was a wave. Let me rephrase, not a cut. It was a surprise that they did it, just because, like we talked about in pre-show, you figure you've got the roster spots. You don't have to make cuts anymore.
Right.
So why, it was interesting that they opened up the spot. I would not read too much into it, only other than they've worked out, 3 or 4 guys we've seen. They've worked out Khalil Davis from the Bucks and from the XFL. They worked out Jamar, I can't remember his name, the quarterback out of the XFL too. They were working him out. I couldn't remember his name for the life of me. But they had a couple guys they were working out. So I don't think they're going to, just because the roster's at 89 does not mean they're going to put somebody big in that spot.
Right.
But I wanted to get y'all's vibes about what you've seen from the outside standpoint. We've been able to show what we're able to show, but just in terms of what y'all heard in the press conferences, if there's anything that stuck out to you.
I mean, at least on move-in day, J.C. Horn mentioning Von Bell and how much he's learned from him and how much he's talking to the room, how much he's really gaining from him and Xavier Woods. I mean, those were 2 guys that I was really excited about, because I think we feel a lot more comfortable with the safety position than we have in years past. We know that's been something we've been trying to get right and hoping we could get right for a long time. I think we finally are moving in the right direction, having, like you said, Von Bell, Eric Rowe, Xavier Woods all in one room. Seeing guys like JC, who's still young. I mean, I think we look at him as a veteran because he's our best guy, but he's still a guy that's very much learning. I think having those guys to learn from is going to be great for him and his growth.
And I'll say real quick, I love Cooley as the defensive backs coach. He, outside of Deuce, he is one of my favorite position coaches because he just has a swagger about him, and he's running the routes for these guys. And you see that, sometime or other, but this is a very active coaching staff. You see, Josh McCown's running full speed at some of these people in their drills. It's ridiculous to see, but I wanted to know your thoughts in terms of some of the press conferences, some of the things you had heard.
I mean, overall, for me, it's just been about the energy around the team, right? I mean, we talked about Bryce and all the excitement around him. We talked about the move-in days. JC seems to be back in his old swag, his old bag. I'm just really happy to see us coming in, not with our heads down this year, right? It feels like there's been a weight lifted. It feels like a new team. And the other thing I've truly enjoyed is the fact that everything that I've heard about the coaching staff seems to be true, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like it was all this false narrative, right? They come in, they've actually made an impact with the players. They've actually made an impact amongst each other, because you can see how excited Frank Reich is to talk to Thomas Brown, how excited, Idro is to talk to the secondary coaches. So I'm just overall an energy for me.
Yeah, there's no question marks on the coaching staff.
Right.
I think that cannot be understated.
Right.
Last year,
Right.
Some of the decisions had a scratch in our head. Everyone this year was like, all right, that makes sense. It's going to come back to bite us, though, because I do not see, Avera's going to get a head coaching job. He's not long for this team. Brown's not long for this team. But I think what is important about that and why they've signed these veteran guys to those longer deals, they're like player coaches in and of themselves. Thielen, we talked about, like you said, Von Bell and Eric Rowe can't be overstated. They're like player coaches in and of themselves. These younger guys we have are learning and listening from them. Like, you see it in practice. It's a very, and Wright mentions it a bunch of times, it's a very, man-to-man coach team, which is such a breath of fresh air after having a man-to-college student coached team. That was the dynamic last year and in the last regime, where this one, it's like a boardroom, Knights of the Round Table. They're all exchanging ideas from player to coach to, whoever. They're all talking about it, and they're all going, well, this is why I did this. This is why I could do this. DJ says he's picking everybody's brain, Jonathan Mingo said he's picking everyone's brain. He's talking to every single one of them to see, why I should do this, how we could run that route better, what this play looks like. It felt different out there, and everyone's saying that, but it's because it's true. It did not feel like last year felt like Last year felt like a lot. Last year felt like a lot. Like there was, it was like they were trying to hide it from us. They were trying to like put such a veil over what was going on for no reason whatsoever. Whereas this time, they're running stuff from the get-go. Everything's being shown. We can only record so much of it. And I'm going to say this disclaimer every time when they ask for the stuff. The media cannot film after about 15 to 30 minutes of practice. They have a set stuff they want us to film. Fans up behind the fence can film whatever. That's what they can show, so now they're allowed to. Which that was a huge thing last year, is that they were, like, security was, like, telling people to put their phones away and not film stuff last year. There was none of that this year.
We should have known something was up.
Did we not already know something was up? I mean,
True.
that's the one thing I thought that, when
But
I heard
everything
that.
you read, though, right? Everything you said and everything you read, everybody said it's going to be special. I'm just excited from a fan's perspective to finally go into a season and feel like we have a chance to win every week. It doesn't feel like we're going to go in and it's a question mark at a quarterback. Doesn't feel like there's a question mark at the receiver. Who's going to be healthy? Right now, we've got the next man up. We feel comfortable with the next man up. We feel comfortable with the leadership that we have. So this is the first year in a long time that that's why I say the energy it's a special year.
I mean, you spoke about it. You saying this is a much more man-to-man coaching team. Right. And there's so many young players that are going to benefit from that coaching staff that has what did we say how much experience they had in total?
We said it was like 80 years plus.
Like 80 years worth of NFL experience all in one coaching staff alongside players that have been in the league for 5 to 6 seasons already. I mean, you got guys like Trimble, Terrace, Shy, all guys that came in those classes of 2020 and 21 that are in weird spaces in their career because we're expecting them to be able to elevate. I think we'll finally get to see them hit that maturation stage now with the coaching staff that I think they can actually learn from, players that they can actually benefit from. You had a bunch of guys that are, like even look at what Derrick Brown said on move-in day. There are no signs, there are no mantras, all that. It's strictly business.
That's right.
And I think you're going to see a lot of players benefit from the fact that this is not a play situation anymore like we had with the last guy.
Right.
So you've got to cultivate a position battle. What are you looking at position battle-wise? Because for me, I think it's less about position battles, who's going to get the spot, in terms of how are we going to use the people we have, for me personally.
Yeah, I mean, along the same lines, for me, from a position battle, I want to see if Mingo is going to challenge for that number one, right? If you're talking about how he's come in, all the stuff that we heard out of OTAs, how Frank Reich talked about him coming into training camp, I'm looking at big things for Mingo. Because when we drafted him, I didn't know that much about him, and after I did some research on him, it's a big boy, and he's going to come out there, he's going to make an impact.
Defensive back, the backup corners, your third and fourth guys, like who out of that group steps up? Somebody has to. I mean, we didn't sign anybody, so whoever's here, you're gonna have to elevate. So does Keith Taylor come into his own? Does he start to have a little bit more consistency? Does C.J. Henderson at some point figures that he should probably play deep? You know what I'm saying?
You would hope and think. And it's funny because like JC, he mentioned by name Stanley Thomas Olivier, which I didn't even know he was still on the roster, to be completely honest. I know he's doing a lot of special team stuff, but I just completely forgot about him. And then, of course, knowing JC and how he's been brought up, Rezjon Wright was another name he mentioned that he's really excited about as terms of a player, and I think that's kind of like one of my camp darlings to see how, he's got a great story around him. Right. The great story only gets you so far. We got to see how you actually perform because, that, like we said, that defensive backs position is going to be so pivotal in terms of they need to stay healthy, and then if they're not healthy, who is going to come up, because they have done nothing necessarily in the cornerback market as of late. Guys like, Marcus Peters, not even talking to him, which I understood, I guess why you don't want to tie yourself down at that point in time, because that's a guy who's going to want the pay and playing time of a starter, and he just doesn't, fit in the system that way, but you need somebody out there. As far as like a position battle, I think Mingo and Chark is going to be an interesting one. You've got a lot of wide receivers in general, because you've got a lot of guys that play similar, roles. Derek Wright's going to be an absolute already backup to Adam Thielen. He'll get a roster spot just because he can do the same stuff that Adam Thielen does. He's reliable. He's a good route runner. He's got that burst inside. He'll stay there. It'll be interesting to see, Shy, Bird, Laviska, like how that works, because you can't keep all of them. And they're not bringing Bird back for, a spot on the practice squad, I don't think.
Another interesting one would be the running back room, right? We said how heavy they are in that running back room. Chuba, how you're going to show up this year, where you're going to fit. Miles Sanders has a lot to prove because there's a lot of barking coming off the Philadelphia Eagles. He's Deuce's guy. Deuce has put a lot of work into that, probably voice, had his back to come to the Carolina. So I think that's another place where you're going to have a real tough battle, real hard decisions.
Yeah, he's the guy I'm kind of watching the most because he has not like the most to prove, although it kind of is that point. And not to be like the devil's advocate, but he's also kind of put himself not in a hole per se, but he's done the talking, and especially with the running back situation and the contracts and how they're all going, and what his stance on it was. It wasn't negative, but it wasn't it was against the grain, so to speak. So he's kind of put himself in a position where he has to perform to back it up.
Right.
And so I'm a little bit interested to see how he does, perform.
Yeah, and a guy like Blackshear as well, who I think will probably make his stick on special teams as a kick returner.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be where he's going to have to fit in, because I think if I'm going off based on what I've seen last year, Sanders is obviously your number one back. There's no question.
It's got to be.
Chuba, to me, gives you the most potential as the backup. I like Blackshear. He's a good change of pace back, but he's probably going to have to stick on special teams if he's going to stick around on this squad.
I just can't see them going out of training camp without keeping a bruiser on the squad.
Yeah,
like Spencer Brown's a perennial practice squad player. We've kept him around for that purpose. And when we had last year our guys, he played a role to be able to be a backup. I just don't see them going away without that and keeping that spot in so you can use that special team spot on Blackshear. But for me, like I said, I keep talking about him. My camp darling is either Bumper Pool on the defensive side of the ball, like Bumper Pool, John Wright on the defensive side of the ball. But then for me, it's Cameron Peoples. I really like. He's got the same build as Spencer Brown. He's about 10 pounds heavier and about an inch taller, and he's got a good burst. He's got a real good burst, and he's fast for how big he is. And like I said, we need that kind of size. I think that he could provide that if we need to use it in that direction. The way that this offense is looking, it's very Philly-centric, very Indy-centric, where it's a lot more of a modern pro-style offense where I don't think they're going to need a bruiser up the middle, which is why a guy like Chuba is so valuable, because we saw when CMC was down, especially that year, he was better at running through the tackles than CMC was that year. I mean, he was able to make a lot from that line and cut right up the middle, so I think that's why he becomes so valuable, is you can still use those kind of plays if you want to. Because I don't think they're going to be that kind of team. Like, the Panthers have been a very run-centric team, and I got to say, from watching the 11-on-11s, and Ian, you can confirm this being out there, maybe 25% running plays comparative to the amount of pass plays that they were running. It was a huge and staunch difference between what they had done in years past, obviously with being so run-centric, where this year it was a lot of passing. And keep in mind, like, in routes, check downs, but there was a lot of pass plays.
So was there any sighting of our owner walking on the field today?
That's tough because Tepper, he likes to be. He likes to blend in, and it's hard to pick out. They all dress.
No golf court.
They dress like any normal trainer. Like Fitterer was wearing like a long sleeve black T-shirt and black shorts, just like any other trainer would. I noticed him walking around. I did see him. I did not see Tepper. Now I could have missed him.
Sure.
I mean, I missed Ian. He was on the sidelines. I didn't even see him. I might have missed Tepper, to be completely honest with you. When you're that's the only problem about, like, not even a problem, because it's awesome to be out there where we are, but you're so locked in. You have 20 minutes to film and get what you need to get, that you're so zeroed in on what you need to do and running around. So I did not notice him out there.
I was just interested because of all the flack, last year, where we were to where we are this year, the whole coaching snafu of the Reich and the Wilkes situation. So I was just wondering, would he be out there the first day, just to kind of, make it a holistic family organization kind of a feel.
And I think he come to think of it, because even in minicamp, like after even like the minicamp before, like the voluntary offensive minicamp that they had right before the draft, that was like the one time I remember seeing Tepper actually out on the practice field in this offseason. I think he's trying to stick true to what he's doing. I think he realizes that he needed to pull back. He needed to kind of be in the wings a little bit more, and I think he realizes it works for him, that you don't catch as much if you don't say as much. So I think he's made a point to not be not present per se. He's still been present in different community events and things like that, but I think he trusts his coaching staff is the one thing. I think he trusts the coaching staff to not, do odd stuff and just do what needs to be done. And so I don't think he feels as much of a need to be out there.
Okay.
And I like that. I mean, he can come around, and I think he will come around. Being that's in Spartanburg, I didn't realize how unique of a process that was for us to have our players go and stay in dorms overnight, away from. I didn't realize how, until I got out of Charlotte, how different that was and how common that is. So with that being the case, I don't think he feels the need to drive. He's not driving now to Spartanburg, he might be flying. I don't think he's coming down that far.
No, absolutely not. I mean, and we are one of the few teams that we travel, we go away for our camp. I think it's great for camaraderie reasons, though. I mean, good to get you away from being from family. You have to really lock in with the guys that you're on the team with. So I mean, I think it's great for building camaraderie, building that what is it?
Yeah, building that presence, building that family, that chemistry together, because it is never been more crucial than this year to do so. Like, that's going to be one of the biggest things when you have a baker's dozen coaches coming in that have never been together. Right. You've got 20 guys that are coming in, that have not been on this team, that are playing key roles on the team. Like, this is the biggest, changing of the guard from one starting roster to the next that I can remember. Like, I'm trying to think of them. Even after the Super Bowl, we still, only, that defense maybe after the Super Bowl where you had, Charles Tillman, Cortland Finnegan, all those guys retire or leave the team right after. I don't think I've seen another year where we've had so many changing pieces coming through. So they need to be, they've all said that. It's all football. There's no escape. There's no distractions. You can go in at 5. You can be up till 3, and someone's doing something the whole time. Yeah. I think they need that right now. That's going to be a big factor.
I think, too, it's also big, too, that make sure that we keep South Carolina in the fold of North Carolina.
Yeah.
With all the bad press over the past.
It was so funny, too, that they did the final, or the start of the demolition on Tuesday when they were moving in. How ironic is that?
Right. So, I think that's important, right? We got to keep that a part of the family because they are Carolina, right? I don't want them to feel like they're our stepbrothers in any way, shape, or form. So I think that's another reason why it's really big for us to make that travel down to Spartanburg as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It was just cool to be out there, and there's a lot to look forward to as we go through. There's a long process through it. I think that, we're going to see a lot of the same stuff as we go day by day. They're going to be slowly implementing stuff in. You all asked me, was there anything that, what was the biggest thing? What stood out? Because last year there was, always something that was an eye grabber because it was just so chaotic. And I don't think there's going to be a lot of that this year. I think it's going to be just getting the job done. They all said, every single player said day by day, it's a process. We got to do it each and every day. And I think that really speaks to the fact that they are going to just take it day by day, put in different things day by day. You might see the defense start to matriculate a little bit more. You'll see things, especially without the cuts, throughout the off season. That's another big thing is that it's not going to be as aggressive. You'll see the waving. That'll happen like we saw today, but you're not going to see those big cuts, and so that's going to make things seem a little bit more methodical. So if it gets boring, if it gets quiet, that's a good thing. You want it to be quiet. You want it to be boring. You want to see good plays. Yeah, you saw a couple of the better passes, and you want to see that stuff, but at the end of the day, you don't want any headlines coming out of this. Right.
Especially, I don't want anybody knocking on all kind of wood. We always get those bad bugs early on. We can't have that. We really need all hands on deck for this season because there's a lot riding on this season, right? Nobody besides another person that we don't like to mention bringing us to the playoffs. So, I'm rooting for us to get there. I think we have a very, very good chance of winning the division.
Yeah, we kept talking about that, and I think it will be interesting to see, paying more attention, honestly, to the other training camps. We keep joking about it. We did it last week. Are they going to start Baker Mayfield? They're going to start Kyle Trask, to see who they're going to do in that. We're going to see, what, how the Saints fare. The Saints are your biggest competition. We know that without question. I think
Miles Kamara going to be coming off of what he had to go through over the summer with his court. And, eventually it got settled, right?
Yeah,
But still, from a mental perspective, really, truly being locked in the offseason to get to that point, what is that going to look like for him? You know what I mean? That's a big question mark for me for them.
Okay, for me, Kamara has, other than how we had been dwindling in our run defense in the last few years, Kamara does not really scare me anymore. He's done his damage to us in the past, but in the last 2-3 seasons, the losing to the Saints was not because of him. Right. You see the margins of error. We shut him down in most regards. He does not scare me that much. I think the scarier part for me for the Saints is that defense. And that defense is just going up against our offense is going to be a concern. Because you're talking about that first 4 weeks is just brutal for Bryce Young. Right. It is ridiculous. And they have going from Atlanta right to New Orleans, that's going to be a really crucial period for him. But for the Saints, it all hinges for me on Derek Carr.
Right. And you talk about Derek Carr, guys like Chris Olave, Michael Thomas being back. those two guys definitely scared me the most out of what they have on that roster. Because I mean, we talk about a secondary. Yeah, I mean, we're getting JC back. Hopefully, he's healthy. But how will Dante be as far as physically at that point? Like, will he really be back to himself? Because I mean, we're gonna get a chance to see if he's lost his step. Because like, an Achilles injury that usually takes something out of you, especially at that type of position.
He looked a little like he was, he didn't look like he was all there, of course, but I don't think he was trying to go 100% right now. I don't think they want him to. Same with Brian Burns, but that's the scary thing with Brian Burns is even his 90% is, 200% compared to some of the other guys.
Yeah.
He was a bit more like reserved, I'd say, and I think though that he is honestly really the most interesting piece of this defense right now. I think that.
Who, Burns?
No, Dante.
Oh, Dante.
Like Burns is just we're waiting to see, he's always performed. We're waiting to see him overperform. JC is just about like stay healthy. When you're healthy, you can do. But like Dante has had a lot of flack. He's had a lot of judgment. He's had a lot of naysayers. I mean, some of us in the room included.
Listen, Dante. Listen, we're gonna start over, my friend. This season we're gonna be good friends. This season, I promise you. I promise you.
Yeah, no, I think that he has a lot to prove, and I think that he could provide a lot more to this room than we needed to get. I think that he can provide that piece because if he can allow JC to be JC and not have to overexert himself, because that's the thing is we never got the two of them. It's like Cam and
Right.
McCaffrey. We've never gotten both of them completely healthy at the same time for more than like 2-3 weeks.
Right.
Yeah. But I think that it will be very helpful. I think like this joint practice against the Jets could not be better timed.
Yeah.
We've seen the stuff coming out of their training camp. Like Garrett Williams looks ridiculous.
Yeah. Aaron Rodgers looks refreshed.
Yeah, there looks like there's nothing slowing the two of them down. And then having Sauce on the other end too, like they're gonna get into battles. It's gonna be real good for our D-backs and for our wide receivers to go against guys like that.
Real quick though, I did want to ask you a quick question on the offensive line. How did they look? I mean, did you see anything that would give you any sort of inclination of being a little bit stronger this year? Like you talked about Icky coming in looking like a beast.
Looks huge. Looks ginormous.
What else from that perspective before,
So I think, Cade Mays he's filling in still, obviously with Corbett being out still. That's going to be your biggest, Corbett and is one of your bigger pieces that you're missing right now. Bozeman, Christensen, they are all looking exactly how we thought they were going to. They've continued to keep up the pace, keep up the speed. They all look still like the chemistry is a lot there. One of the bigger issues is Zavala and his injury. Mm-hmm. We saw that right before, a few days ago. Yeah. That is going to prove, I think, to be a little bit more of an issue. Not because I think that that's going to take away from the line, but that's like him and Cade Mays are like who you're hoping to be, like your depth pieces. You got Irving; he's there more for like that player coach kind of role. Mm-hmm. He did his role, what we wanted him to do. But that's where like Zavala, you were hoping to have that built-in chemistry off the edge and feed right in. Him not being able to get like this is a crucial part, especially for the offensive line. They were working a lot by themselves, more than like any other group, because when they were doing the 7-on-7s, obviously like the defensive linemen, they were doing some more reduced drills, whereas because they were working with the ends and the line, and I think that's going to be the problem with the 3-4 is you need to work them all together. But the linemen were like the only group outside of like special teams that had the most ISO time to themselves.
Right. Okay.
And I think that's good because that's what that's what your offense is hinging on,
Exactly.
Right. I mean, as we get close to the end, special teams, we haven't really talked about that at all.
Yeah.
Who did we see working at punt return, kick return? Did we see anything significant there?
So I think Laviska could play a big role in punt return. I think especially if they're using him more as a Debo kind of guy on the offensive side of the ball, as a true just kind of wide out, I think that he will provide to be more of that kick returner. If not, it's guys like Shi Smith or Demir. Bird. Bird was the last guy to get a touchdown as a punt return, even though it didn't count. Which we haven't had a punt return for a touchdown, and God, I can't even remember. It might be pre-Cam. I couldn't tell you the last special teams touchdown we had outside of
like Philly Brown, bro. Honestly,
it might be Philly Brown.
I think he's maybe the last one.
It might be Philly Brown.
I honestly couldn't tell you. Like it might have been Bird's first stint, around or the second stint. The last one I can think of special teams touchdown is like Colin Jones off of the Odell Beckham muff against the Giants. That's the last like special teams touchdown we've had. So I think, Shi Smith, Demir Bird, I think those guys will kind of play around for that. I think, like you said, Chuba had been that guy that, the kick return. Mm-hmm. And I think it'll be like Laviska or maybe Blackshear. But I think that you're going to see this special teams group and with the guy we have, for special teams, I think could provide a lot. I think they could try to do a lot more on that side of the ball. And you're going to see some of your guys like your Reich Wrights, your Bumper Pools, your Olivier. He's always been that kind of factor there. I think you're going to see a lot of those guys provide those roles that they need to. And I think that's just going to be something we're going to keep seeing as we go on. I'll be interested to see how they change the format going through from this week to next. You got tomorrow's practice, then they're done. Then they got a day off, and they have Saturday, but that's more like the fan-centric day. And then they come back. They've got these different days. But y'all wrapping up, just taking a look at where we're at right now, and just looking at some of the stuff. It still just looks so cool that we're in here, and it still hasn't hit that we're in here, and that we're doing this all together. This is the first podcast that more than just Shontis and I have done in person. If you've watched since 2019, God bless you. If you've listened since then, and that's when Shontis and I would do it together. Back in college, and then Jeff and I would do it together from home at the pandemic. But this is the first time, and so I just want to say thank you, A, for coming down and being able to do this in person with us.
No, I wouldn't have missed it for the world. I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to the season.
That's the one thing that we're looking forward to the season. We want to get y'all's opinions. We want to get y'all to talk to us. Please send us DMs, send us messages, leave comments about what y'all think, what y'all want to talk about, what y'all want to see. If you've got anything to put up here, if you want to see anything specific back here, if they've got it in the catalog, we'll do our best to see if they can get it up here. We're gonna try to change this background here. Let's take a look at some of these stuff. We've got the old centric stuff.
Oh yeah.
Definitely the throwback, the team defense. You got
This
like,
one right here, though.
look at
Pro Bowl.
I love that. You got the Pro Bowl. You got the Peppers. You got Kevin Green here. You got some of these guys.
Oh, the piece of it's on, right?
That's
can we talk about it? Can we talk about it? The Mad 96.
The original, the Jags versus the Panthers, the two cats taking on each other.
That's what I'm talking
for their
about.
inaugural season. I didn't know that existed, and I don't know if that counts in like the Madden cover lore because the Panthers don't have a Madden cover, so I don't know if that counts in the lore. I don't know if that's a custom one or if that's what came out. But that's crazy. I mean, these hats they've got.
I mean, this duffel bag.
That duffel bag is ridiculous.
Duffel bag is crazy. I mean,
that's
not. Hold on.
The logo, that's not vintage. That's of our own design. That's Ian bringing it in.
Somebody, thing nice, ain't it?
I like those.
Look at and even if you don't want to sell it, if you got some pieces, some memorabilia you want us to bring in and put on here, let us know. We can put it on display for people to see. I've got some stuff that I'm gonna bring in too in these next few weeks to show y'all. Because these things are just crazy. I just got a shirt. It was the Fat Cats. It was all the linemen from 90. What was it? 98. We said I think is what it was.
I think so. Yeah.
Or was it 94? Oh, 04. It was 04. All right. So you had guys like Kevin Donnelly, who we've had on the podcast. So we've got to get him back on so I can wear the shirt.
Absolutely.
We're gonna give a shout out, of course, too, before we start wrapping up. Two guys who started out this podcast with us that we wish could be here with us today. That's of course Jeff Taylor, and of course Tyler as well. We miss y'all very much on the podcast. This podcast would not exist without y'all. And we never got to do it in person, but we're gonna get that squared away. Tyler's gonna come down. He's gonna make the trip down south, and we're gonna get that together. And then outside of that, y'all, being here in Lockerroom Charlotte store is really, really cool. It's an awesome location. It was weird to get to, so go to their Instagram to make sure you understand how to get around here. It's a really cool building that it's in. It's an old church building that they have different rooms used for different stuff. There's other stuff down here in the list. And so they've got the address on their page. We'll link it on our podcast page because going forward, we told y'all we had some stuff here. This is going to be the official studio, quote unquote, for the podcast. Now, of course, Jason can't be with us in person every time, but Shontis and I will be here in person as much as we possibly can. After the game, we're going to change the format of when we're dropping them so we can have those reaction. Last year, we were doing it right after the game. We'll change that around here. Maybe give us a day to digest everything, get our thoughts together, get our emotions together. We won't be as volatile as last year, hopefully. God almighty, we won't be as volatile as last year, so we will be more calm and collected. But other than that, y'all, I want to see if you've got a favorite piece that you can see around here. If you maybe something's off camera, pick out a piece that because for me, it's this jacket. This jacket is crazy.
The jacket's crazy. I ain't gonna. Really, just a piece I'm wearing.
Is Carolina first ever? That's pretty hard. Yeah, that's pretty hard right there.
It's tough. So I mean, yeah, it's probably my favorite piece right now.
There's this hat too. He's got one hat he doesn't have up here. It was the Panthers hat with the flames.
Oh yeah.
That one you got to show. You got to look up, and they post all this stuff on Instagram too. That's where we found out about it. And they have the website they're working on getting back up too. So there's a lot of places y'all can go to get this stuff. We'll continue to shout them out. So again, shout out Lockerroom Charlotte for now being our partner as we go throughout this season, giving us this space, this really cool area to go through. Their hours and their location are on their website or on their Instagram. We'll have them paired up too. And y'all will keep going. So before we round out, though, one thing y'all are looking for in the next few days from practice.
Oh, man, let's see how Mingo looks. Let's see how he keeps progressing. Obviously, being a rookie, how does he handle this type of pressure? I mean, NFL camp to college camp is two totally different experiences. Let's see how he keeps progressing. See if he can stick within that top 4 of the receiver group.
Yeah, honestly and truthfully, I do want to see Dante and JC. I want to see how they come back healthy. What are they going to bring to the table?
I'm looking at Miles. I'm looking at how you're going to put, all of this talk into action. And because you're going to be one of the key pieces of the offense this year. When the way it's got set up, we're going to have guys that it's a very offense by committee group right now. Like, they're going to spread the ball around, which I think Bryce Young is used to being at Bama. He didn't have one clear set guy. So I'm really going to see how Miles progresses and goes through. And, you've got big shoes to fill. We've talked about the historic running backs that we've had as a team. Even though we've been a more run-centric team, we haven't had necessarily the top running backs. But we've had some pretty historic ones. So you got to carry on the legacy. But, guys, like I said, thank y'all for watching, listening, tuning in all the time. Again, Lockerroom Charlotte, thank y'all for being out here, having this space. Thank you for getting this space. It's so cool to be out here and having us here now. And until next time, y'all, keep pounding.